So hello and welcome to this session. As part of the buildingSMART International Standards Summit Marrakesh 2024, thank you for joining. My name is Laura and I will be your moderator today. Today's session is titled Building Sustainability Strategic Group, Sustainability Solution for the Built Asset Industry. The speakers for this session are Céline Bend, Nick Nesbet, and Ansueli Schmidt. This session is scheduled to last 90 minutes, including time for questions at the end. The session is being recorded and will be made available in the replay section of the event as soon as possible. Before I hand over to the speakers, I would like to remind you that this is a hybrid event. For online attendee, your microphone will remain muted for the duration of this session. If you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please use the chat box in the control panel. For the attendee here in the room, please keep the background noise to a minimum, and if you wish to make a comment or ask a question, please raise your hand and use a microphone. I would also like to bring to your attention that buildingSMART is committed to ensuring that participation in the development of standards is unrestricted and the process for their adoption is transparent, and standards are developed do not favor any particular provider and are open, non-binding and accessible to all. Please take note of our antitrust code of conduct. The agenda for today will be an introduction presented by Céline. Then we will cover the idea solution by Nick, and then digital product passport and BSDD by Ansueli. Then we'll have a discussion session. I would like to hand over to Céline. Oops.
Hello, can you hear me? Yes. As climate change accelerates, Morocco is facing increasingly severe droughts and water resource scarcity. And as over 85% of the country's water is used for agriculture, these changes are putting immense pressure on farming communities and food security. And in response to this, Morocco has taken significant steps and became a regional leader in the fight against climate change. The country is investing heavily in renewable energy, in water conservation, and in sustainable infrastructure to build resilience for the future. And in a similar spirit, buildingSMART is committed to making a positive change by developing and implementing open digital standards and services. And the goal is to, with this, is to improve profitability, productivity, and sustainability. However, a group of individuals from this community recognized the need to go further. They wanted to make a more tangible and more meaningful impact. And I don't know if you're familiar with this term. In corporate sustainability reporting, this is referred to as a material impact. In other words, that means that you focus your efforts on areas where your products, so our services and our standards, have the most effect. Oh, sorry. So the Sustainability Strategic Group was established 3 summits ago. And since then, the group has focused on life cycle assessments, LCA assessments. And the focus was on improving the processes for life cycle assessments with the help of our standards and services. In an ideal world, if you take, for example, a design tool and a LCA calculation tool, this should lead to a seamless exchange of information from one to the other. But in reality, it's not as smooth as it should be. In fact, it often poses significant challenges to individuals that want to make informed decisions to improve the sustainability of a built asset. So this group has been working on identifying those challenges and proposing solutions for it. and we've shared them with this community during our previous summits, and we've shared them also with other individuals. And with the feedback that we got, we try to refine them and produce guidelines. And what we did is we invited software vendors for LCA or sustainability tools. Some of the big ones, Madaster, OneClick, LCA, Kala Reducer, GreenBIM, and many others. And with their feedback, we also further refined our proposed solutions. So today we're very happy to share with you some of the solutions that we have developed. It includes best practices that we captured on the use case management service, improvements made to the buildingSMART data dictionaries. We developed several information delivery specifications for sustainability. And on top of that, we've shared our recommendations with groups working on future versions of IFC, including IFC 5, which should address the remaining challenges, the big remaining challenges that we've identified. Nick and Hans Wely will present you two of the main solutions that we have developed. And after that, we would like to hear from you. Do you think that these solutions will be helpful for you? And what do you think should be the next steps for buildingSMART? And then I'd like to hand over to you, Nick.
We have a lot of technology, but no slide clicker. Okay. So I'd like to introduce some of the thinking that has gone into the last 18 months. And it started with thinking about the sustainability assessment process. And what we identified was that there was perhaps 4 separate activities led by the people who are designing or designing new facilities or measuring existing facilities. Then there are the people who are specifying or detecting the nature of the materials and products that are in that facility. Then there are the people who are providing the sustainability factors and information. And finally, with contributions from all 3 sources, you can then go into the process of summing and multiplying and getting a final assessment. And that's a generic pattern. I know very well that there are refinements and complications in some of the schemes. But what we wanted to do was to look at the generics, so that we would have solutions and proposals that would be applicable worldwide. And so what I get to take you through is these 4 steps and how we're delivering those steps or supporting those steps using buildingSMART standards. We obviously had to have a big discussion about the scope. And obviously, we took into account the European norms around life cycle assessment. But although there are many stages in the European standard, we grouped them into 4. The first use case is assessing the committed impacts in a facility. You might call that the embedded carbon. You might call it the capital cost. But that's stages A and C in the European model. There are the cyclical consequences from maintenance and replacement, which is B1 to B5. There's the continuing impacts from energy and water, which is B6 and B7. And then there is a consideration of the final end of life of the facility, which might be recycling, might be repurposing, might involve circularity, which is stage D. So we know that in different countries, different regulations are emphasizing some or other of these 4 main use cases. There's a lot of attention, of course, on the committed impacts. And at the same time, we are seeing that people are still thinking through the impacts of recycling and stage D. And I wouldn't say it's a stable topic yet. And so on. But these are the 4 we wanted to consider. I think most of you, having been in the Building Smart rooms for 2.5 days already, will have picked up what IDS is about. So I won't say too much about it, except that it is the best way we have of conveying best practice in terms of information requirements and demand, and checking that it's being delivered. So we want to be able to use the IDS to define what we mean and make it checkable. And then in our discussions, it broke into 3 problems, which I think was a good thing. And actually, we tend to crush them all together in first thinking. But what we identified was that there is a need to make sure there is a minimum relevant and useful information in our facility models, in our building models, in our bridge models, in our tunnel models. Again, it may become from a design process or an engineering process, or it may be the result of a survey process. And then the next question is, given the individual products and materials that have been used, what information should we have about those materials and products? And then the third question is, what information do we need in a sustainability declaration to tell us about the products? And actually, these are 3 separate information requirements. And what I tried to show here is that, yes, it is possible using IFC to have all 3 kinds of information in one super BIM model. But actually, that's not the way, the most efficient way of doing it. And we will have situations where, as on the second line, all the facility and product information is in the BIM, but the declarations are outside. And then there are some other combinations. Or it could be that we're actually talking about federated information, where there is facility information held separately from product information, which is again held separately from declaration information. And yes, we would like all of them to be in IFC, but certainly at the moment, declaration information is not held that way, isn't transmitted that way, but we hope it will be. So there's nothing in what we're proposing that says all the information has to be in one BIM model. And I think that flexibility is really important, because different actors, as we saw in the process diagram, actually take on the different steps in sustainability analysis. I won't linger on that, if I may. So what we did was we developed 3 separate IDS specifications. I think fairly obviously the most important and the most challenging is the facility sustainability information delivery specification. And that's the ones that we would ask that anyone in the industry should check their models against and make sure that they come up to that standard. Because I think one of the ideas we started with was that anyone in the industry can take some responsibility for sustainability. It is as much up to the junior engineers and designers and surveyors as it is to senior management to think about sustainability and make sure it's enabled. So the facility information delivery specification, and what we did was we took the 4 use cases and broke them down, and of course we put them in a spreadsheet. And then we added 1 extra, which is the basic identification of the facility and its location. And so we ended up with a list of clauses about what information should be in the facility model, and yeah, when it's applicable, the site, the building, the facility, and the individual physical elements, and so on. We did the same thing for products, and we then looked at the standards for declarations and made the equivalent or of the EPD standards as a separate IDS, so that we identified what we thought was the best and most practical way of storing sustainability information in IFC if it's done. One of the things that this document and this work wasn't stable. We discussed it, reviewed it. I think one of the most interesting, perhaps, change was that we started off by saying that we weren't interested in bits in the model, in the building, that were smaller than 0.1 of a cubic meter. This is just to stop analyses being swamped with bolts, screws, angle plates, reinforcement bars, whatever it is. In discussion, we actually decided to take that down to 1/100th of a cubic meter. And we also decided to introduce a second criteria, which was anything with a net area smaller than a certain level. So just to make sure that very thin but very wide things like carpets or roofing materials would be included. And that way, I think we tried to focus on what was most significant and not to swamp the systems and the analysis and the reports with failures or missing information for things that were relatively trivial. Maybe not trivial isn't the right word, but relatively insignificant. There were a few other changes that came through, as we particularly when we discussed circularity. As I say, it's an evolving subject, and we had to make some basic, some early choices about what was significant there as well. This is what an IDS looks like if you look inside. It's not intended to look inside, so but it is a machine-readable format. But it should be able to be presented in a way that anyone in an organization, whether they are senior project managers all the way down to the designers and technicians and so on, can understand what is being asked of them. This is one representation of the head of one of the IDSs we produced. There are many other representations of IDS. So we've generated those. Going to go through a small example. When I say small, I mean absolutely tiny. This, as many of you may know, is my house. I am currently having some building work, and it's scary how all the things we talk about in these rooms are turning up in microcosm on the tiny upper floor extension that's highlighted there. And yeah, every morning I say good morning to the builder, and I think to myself, shall I tell you what you're doing wrong? Anyway, I want to take a really simple example so that we wouldn't have to linger on this too long. But I made a block model of my house. There's a garage at the front. There's a side extension from many years ago, and I'm building a new upper floor extension. What we can do with that, oh, sorry, 2 versions of the building, but I was able to load into a checking application not only the model, but the IDS, and it created a set of filters and a set of rules, which meant that I could then check my models to see if I had complied with the information standard. You can see the filters and properties requirements on the right there. No, you can't read them. That's not quite the point today. And of course, the first time I did this, I got a fail. And so across the bottom, I can see that the information, that the side extension lacked certain pieces of information. In particular, it didn't have the correct information about the year of installation. And that is one of the 4 criteria that really runs through all 3 IDSs, that we need to identify the product, the manufacturer, if there is one, generic otherwise, the classification to make sure that there's we can get the right generic information, and the year of manufacture, because without that information we can't be sure we're picking up the right sustainability information. So of course it was corrected and run again, and I got a pass. And IDS really is that simple, that if you have a model, you can find out where its strengths and weaknesses are, and people can then assess whether the issues raised are significant or not. And it may be that they want to develop the IDSs that we've offered to be more appropriate to the kind of work they're doing. But I think we've produced something that is generic for the entire sector. As I say, existing work, new work, buildings and infrastructure, and so on. Just to look a little bit more closely, this is a schedule of the information in that block model, and you can see that the zone labeled EX2, extension number 2, has been identified as being just simply constructed in 2024. Probably I should revise that to 2025 because things are going late. And a total volume, the date, the year, in other words, and its status, which is new. And that is the core of the information that's required. An identification of the manufacturer or generic, the name of the construction or the material or product, a volume, and a year, and a classification. And that's the core of the IDS requirements. And that's intended to be applicable to architectural and mechanical and structural elements equally. So trying to keep it as generic as possible. Then I then looked to create a product called 2024 construction, and effectively that is a date range of when that type of building might be carried out. Again, it's classified, and then that matches in turn to some declaration information that says, in general, that kind of construction has, in this case, an embedded carbon impact of 16,000 kilograms equivalent per 100 cubic meters. Where did I get that information? From an architectural journal, which was reporting on a project that had just been completed. So declaration information doesn't have to come from formal sources. In this case, I was looking for a generic result. So we have the facility information. It complies with the IDS. We had some small pieces of product information complying with the IDS, and we had a declaration information that now complies with the IDS. And we can bring those together, and we can make a basic assessment. Now, it's not the job of the buildingSMART sustainability group to tell people how to carry out the sustainability assessments. So all I'm showing here is a basic ratio calculation that says that given the volume of that construction and a typical density of carbon from current domestic construction, we can predict and some information about the carbon impact, we can get a figure. And I'm not saying this is the most sophisticated calculation, but all I wanted to do was to show that this three-part division does get to an answer. And lest I feel guilty about my carbon impact, I can confirm that my solar panels have saved double that in the last year. So I have a clear conscience. Okay. So just to sum up, the IDS is meant to, the three IDS definitions are meant to be generic and universal. They're not specifically aimed at European practice. They are not specific to any particular calculation method or scheme. What they are doing is saying, what information do we need if we're going to apply any scheme now or in the future? And I think when we started this project, the thing that struck me was that making sure we have the right information for sustainability assessment is the absolute minimum. And that's something that everyone in our industry can implement. Okay, thank you. Good.
Yes, thank you, Nick. I'm also part of the Sustainability Strategic Group, and yeah, it's a pleasure to collaborate also with Nick, which is with his experience, hands-on approach, and yeah, it makes the topic really tangible because sometimes it's a very theoretical topic, and we work on different ends on this topic, so we would like to go now a bit deeper. So we saw the example on the level of the building, but we saw for those calculations we need the product information. So behind the buildings are hundreds of products which create this system we call building, and that's the missing gap actually. So we have on one side the model where we can calculate. On the start we have created several years ago already the BSDD content, which is the fundament to create digital EPDs. So EPDs are environmental product declaration. This is an international standard. And it is also, there is also a standard on how to transform the properties of EPDs into a data dictionary. That's the ISO 22057. That's actually a landmark in the history of standards, I would actually say, because it's the first standards which really tries to transform the content of a human readable standard into a machine readable standard. And this is a very important work because all construction materials will deliver in the future this information, and we need a horizontal standards which can be applied to all materials and not only materials in Europe or something. It must be actually an international standard on how to provide environmental data in a human readable language. In Europe, we have now a push to deliver this data. It is the revision of the construction products regulation, which includes new mandatory information. And this is a part of the EPD. The environmental information will be in several years obligatory information, and the companies will get liable for those information. And as those information are so vast and so, so many information, there is also a logical next step to deliver this information not anymore in PDFs or paper form in different formats, but in a common digital product passport. And this digital product passport will create the backbone where we can add the obligatory information, but also voluntary information from the company. For example, information which will improve circularity at the end of the life cycle, maintenance information during the operation of the life cycle. And in Europe, we see now that we could combine different requirements, because the requirements are increasing exponentially, actually. And the manufacturer, we need to give the manufacturers also a solution on how to deliver this information once on the right place, so that all those different needs of information could be satisfied. I represent the wood industry, so I'm from the Swiss Wood Federation, and we have many of small businesses, and we want to ensure that in the future those small businesses are not excluded of the market. And therefore, it's very important to investigate the possibilities on how small businesses also can participate in this digital framework of the digital product passport. For example, wood has a special requirement. There is the EUDR compliance in the room. It's not yet really set, but we know that clients want to know more in detail where the material is coming from. So we have to deliver in the future geolocation. Where was the tree standing? What is that tree coming from? An area of deforestation, or is it really sustainable forest management? And that's all we could deliver in a digital product passport. So as I explained, we created the needed data dictionary in the BSDD together with Arthur, who helped us a lot there. And from the BSDD, we select the properties we want to declare. So, for example, there are many technical information which are already today obligatory to declare. But in the future, we will see that there is this EPD, it's Environmental Product Declaration, which should be also included. And that's the prerequisite for all the work Nick did, so that we actually have data flowing in this structure. We need information provided in a common digital language, so that our algorithms can access those information and create a continuous assessment of our building during our planning. So as soon as I change a product or add a specific information to the model is able to recalculate in lifetime the situation of my building, and I can calculate also different different scenarios or variations of my building and compare continuously from from early planning stage to the end of the planning. So this geolocation is a new topic, but yeah, we said if we would deliver in the future such information, that will be also part of the DPP. We don't have to invent new databases or something else. We then also we in Switzerland we try to also apply those BSDD contents, and we created a database called Lignum Data, where we have products and components, so assemblies of different products, and we investigated on how we could create generic material descriptions, where at the end the manufacturer just can fix the final specification for his company for this specific beam, for example. So he can select the specific wood species, he can select the specific location where the tree grew, he can select the quality, the dimension, and the quantity per article, so to say. Then he can click on a button. It generates a QR code, a permanent URI, where this information will be available forever, actually. And when this beam, so 20 years or 30 years, someone will take this beam, maybe the QR code is still on the beam or is in the building model. He can scan it and gets the information. What is actually that? What kind of wood species is it? What strength class is it? And then actually he could create a product data sheet and put it on the market. He could say, well, I now get all the information of those products, and before I destroy it, I try to sell it. That should be a clever way of destruction in the future, right? We should also think about on how to reuse materials. And if I would be an owner of a building, my first interest will be try to make the best out of what is there, right? That means what we heard, it's going further. It's not only the life cycle analysis, it's really the management of the data over the whole life cycle. And to also, as a planner, to give new arguments, not only the price, but really the quality of over the whole life cycle, that we say, hey, at the end of the life cycle, you will still have value, will help you to maintain your building. And then the price of the construction is not the first argument, but it's the quality over the whole life cycle. And I think we should achieve this switch to a more holistic view of projects, that we really can build sustainable in the future. It is actually needed, for example, for public procurement. You cannot just pick something out of the air and say, that's my requirement. It's not a harmonized topic. We have WTO regulation, which explicitly tell us we have to rely on international harmonized standards and not private labels or something if we want to compare different offers. And therefore it is also very important to have the right standards, but also the solutions on how to calculate reliable and reproducible LCA data. So if we look into the future, we have here the development stage of the SpaceX engine, of the SpaceX rocket. And maybe what Nick showed us was a bit the rocket on the left side. It's still a bit complicated. You could be intimidated by it. But as soon as we have the digital product passport and the BSDD has also a better ontology, I'm very convinced that we will achieve a very lean and simplistic solution in the future. So I invite everybody to try to do the first step and give us feedback so that we can go ahead in this direction. So thank you very much. That was it from my part.
So we've introduced the project. It was 18 months ago that I suggested that the need for this was urgent and that if we hadn't succeeded in a year, we should give up. Now it's 18 months and we didn't give up. But we now have a set of outcomes. And I think I just want to point you to, first of all, the BSDD, that you will be able to find the definitions from ISO 22017 in LCA-3, version 3, I think it is. So they are now in the BSDD and available to use, and that covers not just carbon impacts, but also all the other environmental impacts for water and earth and air. The IDSs are available if you go to the use case management tool. I think this is an example of where the use case management tool comes into its own, because you can search there on the word sustainability and you will find a summary of all our thinking and the decisions we've made and the diagrams and the 3 IDSs I've talked about. So we are now ready to enter the implementation stage. I'm sure there'll be feedback. I hope there'll be feedback and maybe even corrections and revisions. But yes, the use case management tool will bring you to the IDSs. The BSDD will bring you to the data definitions of the things, of the information we're looking for. So yeah, it's now over to you people, and starting with the questions and Mentimeter.
Thank you. So I hope you've been able to sign up for Mentimeter, and also those of you online. For the next questions, multiple answers can be selected. And it's just a bunch of example answers that you could give. We don't have the other option. If you have another answer, please type it in the comment area. There should be a comment area at each question, so you can add more suggestions to it. So oh, okay. Okay, let's start. How will you apply what you just heard in your work next week? That's a really important question. So please take a time to read through the different answers. Okay, that looks good. We really invite you all to test our different solutions, obviously. Nobody's planning to take any action so far. That's also good. It's just a question, does anybody have difficulty accessing the Mentimeter? No? Okay. So, Nick, I think you will get quite some feedback next week.
I'm on holiday.
Okay, thank you. Let's move on to the next question. So we're curious to know from you, what are your biggest challenges currently with sustainability assessment in combination with OpenBIM? There you go. Okay, that's very useful feedback. So it seems that there is a lack of clear guidance or standards for sustainability assessments. That's definitely something that we can help with. I think. Yeah, and obviously the difficulty in integrating the data into the workflows. Okay, great. Thanks again. Let's move on to the next one. What do you think we should focus on next? And again, please type other suggestions in the comment box. Yeah, so again, there is a need for clear guidance and training. It's something that we're planning also to include in our OpenBIM training program for professional certification, obviously. And it seems you experience software compatibility problems as well. Any thoughts on the results?
Looks like we have a lot to do. There's one item there about sustainability beyond LCA. And I could have mentioned that we excluded from our work considerations of energy modeling of buildings, because the building domain has tackled that separately, and they have a building energy modeling IDS detailing what information should be in a facility model for the energy simulation. I don't think as much attention has been paid to the water simulation, but that we didn't want to tread on the good work that Mirbeck has been doing in the building room. So it's not that we didn't consider it; we just discovered that it had already been covered.
Let's move on to the next question. So talking more about guidance and tools, what resources would help you to use open standards for sustainability? So case studies would be helpful, and tools to simplify LCA data entry and management. Oh, okay. Okay. Okay, we have a few more, one more. Let's move on. Do you want to be involved in our work on sustainability? And in what way? Was no an option actually? No? No. Yeah. Mhm. Okay, that's great news. So it seems you'd like to contribute. That brings us to the next and I believe final question. Can we contact you to be involved? And I think you now see the option to enter your email address, so we can do that after the session. Okay. Anything else you'd like to share? Any feedback? Yeah.
You can type it as well.
You can type it, but you can also
You can
say
share
it.
it on.
Yeah, we have time.
I will not start with, I'm an architect, so I don't like to type, but more to draw. But the first question, what it underlines what your story just gave is that the information in a model should be open because it should be used, as you said, a lifelong time. So it must be accessible through all kind of means of software. And the other thing is that you use the information you just shared, for example, when it is built for more than this reason only. So there are more things. So what it also underlines that it's not a separate thing. It is something which is part of the entire information stream. So you get it by itself. But my question is, how is the accuracy of the information, like with the QR codes? How can you assure that it's real, that it is, that we can use it, that there is something, that it is an organization stamps on it or whatever? How can you show that, or what's the thinking about that?
Okay. Yes. So one thing is the technical aspect. I think that could be the easy one. The thing is that how we organize it, and we know we have standards. But as long as the company are not obliged to deliver it and not controlled, and it's not a legal information, it's more like a soft information, it will never work. So unfortunately, in this case, we need a regulator here who helps us to give at least a framework. I would not say more, but at least give a minimal framework to say, oh, hey, okay, so far you declared this technical data, but now go ahead and provide this information. And there is a process behind on how we control the quality of this data. so that your question would be answered, that it is a reliable information. How the information is kept forever, there must be also, I guess, a governance of data, which includes in data infrastructure, which allows to register those DPPs in a registry, which will, independently what happens to the company, will remain somewhere accessible. And this is all those points are actually mentioned in the CPR, and there's now a feasibility study, the CIRPAS-2, going on, where this is investigated in a kind of proof of concept to find out how this system will work. Is it a centralized or more decentralized? As a representative from Switzerland, which is not part of the EU, I would prefer a decentralized solution. We have also the history of more federal organization. And because it's not only a European topic, it's really an international topic, and it will improve really. It is an effort, but it will improve the work of so many people to not retype information, to not search for information. You will be able to find really the matching perfect product on the real best place. So I think we should go ahead, and there will be also different requirements. So for the big pollutants, there will be more strict rules, and I guess for other materials, we'll be able to use more generic information of association, so intermediate values. And if then a company really wants to be better than all the others, he can try to do a separate EPD, for example.
Hello, I would like to supply some additional information here. The standards for the DPP system are currently chosen and selected in JTC24 under SENS-NELEC for the whole of Europe. That will deal with issues of backups, of authentication, of security, of level, so according to access levels. Both are actors on the regulator, on the private person, on the economic operator, on the market surveillance, and so on. This work is going on now. It will be finished next year. It is not CIRPAS-2 who does this standardization. It is JTC24. Okay. And buildingSMART doesn't have a liaison there. So I recommend that buildingSMART is doing a liaison there and follows it. And then there will be TC442, Working Group 12 of SEN, that will develop the digital product passport for construction products under the CPR. The startup is on the 30th of October in Brussels. So, and this will be the system in Europe. There is also ISO initiative, which I know too little about to talk about. I just want to mention it. ISO has also an initiative. I believe it's mainly driven by China. And we have to see how they go together. But for Europe, if you're interested in the European market, this CPR, ESPR system is under development now. The only who is missing is buildingSMART.
Missing.
Peter Axelsson from Sweden. I thank you for an interesting presentation here and important topics. I have a couple of questions here. The first slides you showed, Nick, with different models, where you can think of a federated model or putting everything in IFC. Sometimes it's almost in the genes of every standardization organization to put everything in your own standard here. But I think it's an important choice you have to make, and I'm not sure that we should put everything into IFC just because we can. So I think that's one of the questions I need to, it should be answered on a early level, I think. The second one was regarding the European work with that was raised by the previous speaker here. I think it, and I mean that also raises the question if it should be put in the BSDD or there will be a European database with product passports. So I mean that's also something that needs to be considered. The third question was in the Menti question. I think it was number 3 or something. It was a lot of questions. What should BSI develop of different tools and that's also a question that should BSI develop these tools, or is that a little bit outside of the scope of BSI? Because it's getting into an area where it's you could say compete with other software vendors on the market, and I think that's also something that needs to be to be clear before we start anything like this, which is to be sure that it's something that we all agree on, that it's part of the BSI.
Yes, just to take your comment about should all the data be in one model, that was the first thing that we identified, was that whilst it might be possible, it might not be such a practical idea for it all to be in one model. And we recognized that the product data might be in an IFC form, or it might be in some other form, and the declaration data is very likely at the moment to be in a different form than IFC. So we wanted to make, by making 3 IDSs, we wanted to be very clear that we are not prescribing any particular distribution or federation. We're saying that you can test those 3 things. You can apply the same, all 3 IDSs to one BIM model if you want to. If you want to have a BIM model that has everything in it for record purposes, or for maybe even for a legal submission, you could do it. But we don't recommend, we're not recommending that. So that's why we split the IDS into 3 separate ideas. And I think that's really important going forward. Secondly, we are very aware of the work that's been happening in the EU, and we made sure we didn't contradict or undermine or do something different to what the EU expectations are. But at the same time, we wanted to produce a set of standards that were truly international and would help the entire industry across the globe to have the information needed for sustainability assessments. And then the third thing you mentioned, if I get this right, was should buildingSMART be competing with software developers or competing with consultancies and so on. That's always been a difficulty for buildingSMART, particularly should it compete against its members and so on. But you know, buildingSMART does write software. There are validation tools you can use. We do create databases. The BSDD is a database which we offer the industry. But there was no intention in the sustainability group to develop software. That's just not what we should be, what we thought that we should be about.
Yeah, just to add to that, maybe tools was a bit on an unfortunate chosen word. We have no intention at all to develop any software tools. It was more referring to guidelines, improvements to our standards and services. We do want to work closely together with those parties that are developing tools, because their feedback could help us produce those guidelines or improvements. So that's what we started to do with this group. We wanted to be in close collaboration or in touch with those parties that are developing those solutions, and not only software tools, but also, for example, we were in touch with Eco Platform, a large online EPD database. So yeah, just to clarify the question. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm not sure I can answer all of them, but first of all, the one that's nearest to me, which I can read most easily, I think in using the IDS, we had to wait for version 1.0 to be released, and that's one excuse for taking 18 months rather than 12 months. And the biggest issue was that when we decided to have a volume criteria and an area criteria for what should be included, it was in the nature of the IDS at the moment that meant we doubled the number of rules we had to include. But specifically because of the need to consider large area but low volume objects, like carpets, that's exactly why we added in that second criteria. I think the question about how to apply information inside, e.g. Revit or whatever, we were very conscious to limit the amount of information we thought should be in a facility model. In other words, we only include those things which we thought would be useful to link to product data, and not to put too much in. And it's then a case of using whatever tools it is. And I quite agree that some of the current BIM modeling tools are very instance orientated, and they're not easy to make global updates or systematic updates. But there's I'm no expert, but there's a whole industry of add-ons that help you manage the information in these tools more systematically. Otherwise, send a message to your Autodesk dealer saying that it's not working for you.
Hello, maybe can I help on that one? I had the mic here. And I want to add my neighbor, Arjen de Haan from Holland. We are a software vendor from BIMPACT and Buildify. And it's one of the tools which already does that MPG calculation, so LCL calculation for the Dutch market. We now rebuilt the tool to do it also on IFC. We discovered that you don't need that much information in IFC. You need only one GUID, that's the one in the dictionary of the Dutch government in this case, their database. And then you need the normal parameters like length, width, height, or volume, because you only need to make the link between those two databases and then run the calculation on their scheme, on their submit. Because if they change some data on the backside or they're adding new parameters on it, you have to get new data from that database. So it's, I think in my personal vision, stupid idea to put that all in IFC, because then you have also a big problem on the data accuracy, especially because the regulation demands that you do it with the current data from that date. So yeah, I can show you the stuff that you built. We want to share it in this community. It's not a problem at all, because we believe that you have to build this together.
Good. There's a comment there, safety first. I think the fire exits are there and there. I'm not quite sure what the significance of that comment is. And I hope we've answered the question about the relationship with the European standards, that we respected them, but they're not central to what we've delivered.
Maybe with regards to the safety comments, it is for most construction companies the most important indicator for that is non-financial, so a sustainability indicator, and it's definitely an important topic, I think, to look into, also because I have seen from my previous work at a construction company that it correlates with many other performance indicators of a business.
The regulatory domain is reviewing its route map, and one of the areas of investigation is health, safety, well-being as a regulatory topic. So it's not neglected. Are there any online questions?
Well, these are the online questions, because our online participants can join in. IDS is important, but where to apply the sustainability data inside the model? For example, Revit doesn't have such a possibility. Covered that one? Yeah, I believe also our guidelines, some of those we showed earlier should help with that, and we should make that public to help as many people as possible with this problem. All right.
Celine, can I ask a question?
Yes.
Just a little bit also on the question that was asked there, why to store everything in IFC. When I came into the working group sustainability, my first question was also, why are you storing everything in IFC? But however, I don't think it's a real discussion, because I think, as somebody mentioned there, you can not store it in IFC. You can also store it in IFC, and I think the scope of this working group was decided at some point, let's make, if we want to put everything in IFC, how would we do that? How would that look? And the people who want to store it in IFC can now use that IDS. If you don't want to do that, maybe there's another working project and another working group that can be done about that. But I think the scope was maybe not mentioned clear to the audience here. And if you are in that scope, then that is not a question anymore. Then it's just, okay, I want to put everything in IFC. This is how to do it. So, I mean, I think that was the scope of the working group that maybe was not very much explained at the beginning. And to eliminate that discussion sometimes.
Hi, can I add? Arthur Tomczak from buildingSMART. I think we made a recommendation at the last summit not to put it in IFC. We just heard from so many people that they are doing it because they are required to do it. So we said, okay, if you have to do it this way, not any other way. And to the comment about the IFC being like file-based format, the IFC 5 is going to change that a bit. So we are also we are also gathering feedback, what has to change in IFC so that it could enable more use cases. So yeah, hopefully at the next summit, we can present more about how IFC 5 will answer some of the pain points we have.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. I don't know if you have discussed, but LCA also include, at least in Denmark now, we have to include the construction phase as well. And I know that there's also the construction room in buildingSMART or domain. They're kind of looking at temporary construction and so forth. So that's, I don't know, has that been considered as a future item?
Well, the process costs of product can be included in the environmental declaration. I think the environmental impacts of construction processes would follow exactly the same principles as we've followed here, but there hasn't been that much attention paid to IFC construction resource and IFC tasks and those things. I think that's a specialist area, and I would very much like to see the construction process, well, IFC being used more to share information about the construction process, and then we would have the equivalent IDSs to apply to tasks instead of products. So there's a future there.
Yeah, although having done those calculations myself earlier, I wonder if you really need BIM for those. They're usually very easy. So the emissions coming from the construction process itself, correct? That's what you're referring to.
Yeah, but it could also be temporary constructions, scaffolding, formwork, things like that. That could be in the model.
Yeah, yeah.
If you're using ISC for supporting your construction erection of the building.
Okay, yeah.
Hello, this is Jin Yin from University of Cambridge. I'm an academic. I work on how to include the carbon data for life cycle of the infrastructure, and I think it's a follow up with that question that as far as I know, the industry is more doing the estimation based on the design, but we are not really assessing very accurately the construction or the carbon actuals, we call it, the actual carbon emission during the processes. And how do you think about that? How do you consider to include that, especially the information sharing between all the stakeholders, value chain members along this process? Because I talk to people in industry and they say like, oh, we don't. There's not a because different people use different software or different platform, different tools. So there is a problem with the data standardization. And I think this is where IFC can help, but I'm still exploring how we can do that. And also, as Nick mentioned in your house case, you use the generic data, right? But I think we would like to have more specific data, more updated data. And how can we connect this specific more update our specific and dynamic data and connect it with IFC? Those are the questions I have. Thank you.
Well, yes, I wanted to give it a generic example because it will be simple and concise. But exactly the same method can be used for specific products if they are known, either from a building survey or from as part of the design process. I think of the 4 use cases, it does include the impacts of the facility in use, both energy and water, and replacement and maintenance. So the opportunity is there to make those kinds of assessments. As I said, a lot of the focus is on the embedded, the committed impacts at the moment, but it will. I think people's attention will turn to the whole life. I think the question as to whether owners will maintain enough information about their asset to continuously assess is a very interesting one. And I think it's one of the things that IFC5 has to answer is how do people maintain their models over 20, 40, 60 years and so on. Because at the moment, I think there are very few buildings where there is an up-to-date model being maintained.
Yeah, a lot of the information is about the embodied carbon data, but not much attention has been paid to operational data, but that's a very big part of it. Yes.
Yes, thank you. Yeah, I guess those 2 questions directly going in the same direction. So that what we talk about when we have EPD, environment product declaration, is cradle to gate and then the disposal. That's what we know when the product is produced and is at the factory gate, right? And then what's happening then to the site of the construction, that's then really depending on the project, and then new information come into play. So the geolocation of the gate, the manufacturing gate, and on the site. And as you said, then the operational topic is also then really depending on the project itself. In my view, was already we have laws and regulation which is caring about those topic of operation. In my view, the part of production and disposal was a bit neglected and gains more importance as the efficiency of the buildings is increased and going to zero in the impact. So we have also to look on the impact of the material, the production of the material, and how this will disposed. For logistics, there are solutions. GS1 has solutions how to track and trace materials. We don't have to reinvent everything. Maybe that will be then a next step to find out how we can actually track and trace. And maybe the third thing is we don't have standard EPDs for every product. We have systems which are made to order, and that's also a topic how we can create maybe configurators where we can configure everything and then also generate the EPD on the run for this specific tailored system, so to say.
Okay. Question, I also put it on the screen there. You fully convinced me that the buildingSMART approach can do DPP, right? Especially for construction products. I'm also involved in TC442, where we have the 86 and the 87 standard, and even the 12063, yet a bit different but related. But the data models, the technology, the semantics are all slightly or quite different. Yeah. Clearly, we have to work together in the new GTC and etc. to have one approach in the end, I guess. You cannot ask people to support both data templates with the technology and semantics and BSI in parallel tracks, I think, for the right critical mass. So how in the end, I had already so many discussions about this also with Espen Schultz in this area and also with Arthur. And how do we bring this together? How do we come to one set of standards, maybe not just for construction product materials, but also general products, etc. How do you see the next first step? Is that in the GTC? Is that how? Yeah, we have to bring these worlds together.
Yes, I mean, the European efforts have always, are on the leading edge of specifying these things, and we took into account everything that we knew about the European efforts. I see no reason why information about products coming from data templates can't be transmitted in IFC if people want to do that. Or we can have services that access other data sources as if it was an IFC source. There are many combinations around this, and I think we have to separate the standards that are defining assessment methodologies from the standards that are talking about data exchange and the standards that are talking about other things. So, of course, these things overlap, but the basic information requirements is that I hope we have got those reasonably correct and practical, and it will allow people across the world to actually make sure there is enough information to answer sustainability questions. Jan Karlsroy has added an area which we didn't really look at, which is assessing construction processes. But I think we have the tools to make sure that the specifics are captured. We are not saying that EPDs should be stored in IFC, but they might be accessible in IFC. I don't think there are any conflicts coming forward. So I think we, just because they're coming from different sectors of the industry or different mindset, we don't have to assume that they are in conflict. I think the the availability of the information to do the right things is what joins us all together.
Okay, thank you. I see there can always be transformations, but in general, transformation is trouble in my view. So any opportunity we can have or intention that to bring these standards together and to have a bit less standards, data standards than all these acronyms and standards around, we should try. At least I hope. But okay, that's my personal feeling.
We can do the work. Yeah.
I'm working for the Norwegian Building Authority, and we are having a study, made a study last year where we compared 4 LCA tools on model type buildings. So we calculated the same buildings with different LCA tools. And the outcome was that the results for the same structure is factor 3 different. Then we have inputted the 4 LCA tools with the same identical data, and the output is factor 5 different. So there is a problem on the quality of the data input. There is a quality of the interpretation. There is a lack of interpretation of the standards different, and there is a different implementation of the LCA tools to the technique. The problem is we are using these LCA tools to make evaluations on the quality of, say, sustainability to buildings. We're giving environmental friendly loans, we're giving BREEAM certificates, we're giving a taxonomy, what actually we are doing there. This is all wishful thinking or a dream concert, what we are doing there actually when we look at the quality of the data. And there will be, I think it takes many years. In 5 years, I would hope that when, at least I know this is a global audience, but in 5 years in Europe, when we have the first environmental construction product standards coming out with a harmonized standard on the environment and a digital product passport on top, we start tracking the transport of construction products through Europe. And together with the quotation of the CO2 footprint and the price today at 65 euro per ton, if you actually calculate the real footprint then into transportation, we start in 5 years, we start talking about short traveled construction products. We will start evaluating whether we should buy the local product that is more expensive, rather for buying the cheap product that we need to travel long and pay a CO2 tax for. This is where this is going to. But meanwhile, we have to focus that the LCA tools that we have are resembling nature, and we are not needing standards there. The standard is the nature itself. We need physicists and chemists who sit down and mathematicians who make a proper model, as they do it in the meteorological model, as they do it in the climate and in the groundwater models, whatever, mechanical models. There is very sophisticated mathematics on it. You mentioned it, that these models are very easy. Yes, that is the problem. They are very easy, they are simple, they are too simple. They are not resembling the nature. So if buildingSMART would like to participate there, or we should all together participate in making the physics and the chemistry and the mathematics in this model resembling the complex things going on in nature when we are building, not standards, but the natural science needs to come in there. This was my comment, and if you want, we can probably give update on this research in one of the next summits, perhaps in Singapore or so. We're working on it systematically in Norway.
Thank you. I think that's a nice closing remark for the session. Thank you. Please, can you move it on the next one? Please contact me if you want to discuss further, if you have anything to share with us. Thank you all very much for your attention, and look forward to meeting you again and discuss this topic further.